appointed the advisory panel of experts on land reform challenges. The expert panel is expected to provide useful perspectives to achieving the main objectives of land reform, including attaining equality in land resource access and ownership. The panel is also expected to resolve the challenges in agrarian reform, as well as achieving viable and equal urban land development. To talk about this, we have Professor Cyril Mbatha of Unisa's Graduate School of Business Leadership, who says some of the problems associated with the failure of South Africa's land reform projects are linked to limited market access for emerging black farmers. Thank you very much for coming to our program.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Right. So within the context of land reform and the challenges that black farmers face, what did you find out in the study that you have conducted recently?
So the main objective of the study was to look at marketing strategies that are used by especially smallholders in Kenya. A number of reports have come out through the UN and other donor agencies that they use avenues including online platforms, and they call themselves digital farmers. So that was the inspiration on my side to go there and see what other avenues the small holders as marketing avenues are using there. So when I got there, there are other things that I discovered, but I realized that they don't only rely on the formal markets, for example. So the informal market sector in Kenya is very vibrant, very dynamic, and it is supported by government.
So now then, regarding the problems that emerging black farmers are facing from the study in Kenya in the context of South African emerging black farmers, and with the issue of land, what did you discover?
So in South Africa, with the land restitution cases, what we would have is a big number of members of communities that are given land back. And because the land sometimes is too small for the number of for the thousands of community members that need to be on the land and need to be farming on the land, what often happens is that the land is pulled together, and then it is given over to a manager in a joint venture. That's the new sort of the new trend, or the emerged business model in the South African land reform market. But you find that because there are so many people on land, the conflicts in terms of how the land should be used end up sometimes messing up those joint ventures.
With money, whether it's going to come or not, then it's a question of the farmer would not have a guarantee that he will get paid at the end of the month.
Well, yeah. So if you've got a large number of people who have got vested interests or rights to the land, and then you've got land that is limited, definitely there's no guarantee whether or not the business is going to make. But the biggest conflicts really are around the decisions that are taken on what needs to be produced on the land and how it needs to be marketed, and when the investments are going to be. The lack of information between the partners, the big business partners, with the small the small communities often lead to the collapse of the projects. So when I get to Kenya, I find that the land does not really need to be big for farmers to be able to be viable and sustainable. 4 acres of land, you find farmers that are of that size and they're very successful. In fact, you find that some of the farmers earn incomes that are similar to those earned by typical public officials like teachers and nurses. So, and the idea that the land that needs to be used for agriculture only has to be in rural areas is really refuted by the findings in Kenya. You find that some of the farms are very close to urban centers because the land does not have to be as big.
This sounds like a comparative study between South Africa and Kenya, but
Sure.
Here the challenges that have been experienced is that you will have people who want to own land, but they are not involved. Somebody would be staying in Johannesburg but having a plot in Ventersdorp. And also you find that there is neglect when it comes to the animals that are there not being fed on time, farmers not being paid on time, and the likes. So in regards to that, what does the whole project envisaged to achieve in terms of the transformation process?
So yes, I did find data that indicated, especially for some of the bigger farmers. So I looked at farms that range from around about 4 acres to about 50 acres. And the trend was that for the big farmers, you found that the owners of the land were residing in locations like Nairobi, whilst the farms themselves were in counties like Kilifi, which is around the coast. And when you compare on how the farms are performing, the smaller farms where farmers actually own the land with title deed, either personally or by families, by far outperformed the farms that were actually owned by absent landlords. So if there's one lesson that we should avoid in South Africa is for the land to be grabbed by politicians or government officials, army generals, who would then be residing in far away from, because people don't really have the incentives to perform on that land. Mm-hmm. And the differences on incomes that are generated per acre of land that is farmed by farmers who actually own the land, even though the land is smaller, outweighs the returns in terms of income that are generated on bigger portions of land.
Just before you go, as we wrap, there has been a problem that has been associated with the failure of South African land reform project and also its limited market access for emerging black farmers. So how can there be disruption so that the problems that are currently being reported regarding the ventures that you have already been alluded to, mm-hmm. being the contracts that the young and emerging farmers sign up for, mm-hmm. end up being violated, and mm-hmm. there is high maximization of risk that other stakeholders like banks do not want to buy in.
So it is clear to me that if a venture is being established, it has to be clear that that's not the only venture or contract that's going to be signed with a big business. Farmers are better at reducing their risk if they diversify the number of products that they produce, so they don't have to deal just only with one business partner in one particular venture in case that venture does not succeed. So the more diversified the production is, the more diversified the marketing strategies are. Use of online platforms like I alluded earlier on, like Facebook, the use of contracts with restaurants, with hotels, with other vendors that would come directly to the farms. So the more diverse the marketing strategies, the more diverse the number of products that are being produced, the less risks that the smallholders would be taking.
All right, Prof, this means that this conversation won't end here. Since we're having a debate about land and transformation in the country, surely one day you'll come back again so that we can be able to elaborate on the subject further.
Definitely, thank you.
Thank you so much. Sure. That's Professor Cyril Mbatha of Unisa's Graduate School of Business Leadership, talking about whether or not we can resolve the problems that are faced by black emerging farmers.